At some point in a man's life, something breaks quietly inside him. Not in a dramatic way, not with anger or shouting or slammed doors. It breaks when he realizes that no explanation he has ever given has truly saved him. He remembers the times he tried to clarify his intentions, soften his words, justify his boundaries, or translate his thoughts so that a woman would finally understand where he was coming from. He remembers believing that if he could just explain himself better, everything would fall into place. The conflict would dissolve, the tension would ease, the respect would return. It never did. What he didn't understand then is that explanation is not neutral. It is a position. And in relationships between men and women, it often places the man beneath the emotional frame he is trying to negotiate. When a man explains himself too much, he is not communicating strength or honesty. He is unconsciously asking for permission to be who he already is. He is signaling uncertainty about his own authority. He is offering his inner world up for debate. Women do not respond to that the way men think they will. A woman may say she wants clarity, communication, and emotional openness, and on the surface she believes this. But beneath words lives instinct. Beneath social language lives perception, and perception is not persuaded by logic or justification. It reads tone, posture, decisiveness, and emotional gravity. A man who explains himself excessively feels like a man who can be moved. That is where attraction quietly leaks out. The man who stops explaining himself to women is not cold, bitter, or emotionally closed. He has simply learned that his actions speak more honestly than his defenses ever did. He understands that presence carries more meaning than argument, and silence often communicates boundaries better than 1,000 carefully chosen words. This man does not rush to clarify every misunderstanding. He does not panic when his intentions are questioned. He does not scramble to repair his image when a woman feels confused, upset, or uncertain about him. He lets her feel what she feels without immediately stepping in to manage it. That alone changes everything. Because when a man stops explaining himself, the dynamic shifts. The woman is no longer reacting to his words, she is reacting to his reality. She feels the weight of his decisions instead of the softness of his justifications, and that weight creates polarity. Explaining is often driven by fear, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being seen as wrong, fear of being abandoned if the other person does not fully grasp your inner reasoning. Many men confuse this fear with emotional maturity, believing that self-disclosure equals depth. But depth without backbone becomes emotional leakage. The man who stops explaining himself has learned that being misunderstood is not fatal. He understands that not every woman will interpret him correctly, and that trying to control her perception only weakens his position. He accepts that some women will project their fears, insecurities, or past wounds onto him no matter what he says. Instead of correcting those projections, he watches them. That watching is power. Because when a woman projects and a man does not chase the projection, she is forced to confront herself. She must either adjust her perception or walk away. Both outcomes serve him. This is why such a man feels unsettling to women who are used to emotional negotiation. He does not plead his case. He does not over-validate. He does not drown conflict in reassurance. He stands still while emotions move around him. And stillness is magnetic. This does not mean he is cruel. It does not mean he withholds affection or refuses communication. It means he communicates when there is purpose, not when there is pressure. He speaks when his words add value, not when silence makes others uncomfortable. Women are deeply sensitive to this difference, even if they cannot articulate it. A man who explains himself too much is trying to be chosen.
A man who stops explaining himself assumes he already is, and if not, he walks. That assumption changes how he moves, how he listens, and how he leads. His voice slows. His decisions become cleaner. His emotional center stops floating outside his body, waiting for approval. Women feel this as groundedness, as certainty, as something they cannot easily shake or control. Paradoxically, the less he tries to convince, the more convincing he becomes. This is because explanation is rooted in the mind, while attraction lives in the nervous system. You cannot argue someone into desiring you. You cannot logic your way into respect. These things emerge from how safe, steady, and sovereign you appear under pressure. When a man stops explaining himself, he stops reacting. And when he stops reacting, he starts leading the emotional tempo of the interaction. That is why arguments with such men feel different. They do not escalate. They do not spiral. They do not feed the drama. They simply exist, and then they end, either through resolution or distance. And distance does not scare him. Most men fear silence because silence exposes their lack of leverage. This man has leverage in who he is, not in what he says. He is not afraid to be alone with his thoughts or to let a woman sit with hers. That alone makes him rare. Women often test men unconsciously, not to hurt them, but to see where their center lies. A test is not always a confrontation. Sometimes it's emotional ambiguity. Sometimes it's withdrawal. Sometimes it's doubt, expressed casually, almost innocently. The man who explains himself fails these tests without realizing it. The man who stays grounded passes them without trying. He understands that attraction does not grow through persuasion, but through consistency, through congruence, through the quiet alignment between word, action, and self-respect. This man still communicates, but his communication has weight because it is not compulsive. When he speaks, it is because he has decided to, not because he feels forced to. His boundaries are implied before they are announced. And women feel safer around implied boundaries than declared ones, because declared boundaries feel like defenses. Implied boundaries feel like facts. The psychology of the man who stops explaining himself is simple, but not easy. He has done the internal work to trust his own judgment. He has accepted that not everyone will stay. He has made peace with being disliked by those who benefit from his self-doubt. He no longer performs emotional labor to keep others comfortable at the cost of his own clarity. And that is why his presence feels heavier, calmer, and more attractive. Not because he is mysterious by design, not because he withholds strategically, but because he no longer needs to be understood in order to be himself. That freedom is visible, and once a man reaches it, he never goes back.